Antrich und Ehre, war sich der noch angesäche. So bist du ihr aller Ehre. Was ist Wundes hier geschäche? Dass ein Magd ein Kind gebar, ihre über aller Engel schar. Was das nicht ein Wunder gab.
This is The New Right, a podcast for the lost arts, reclaiming the literary holy land from the heathen. This is Dan Baltic.
And this is Matt Pegas.
And we are here with Billy Pratt, Bad Billy Pratt, who is the author of
Welcome to Hell.
Welcome to Hell. There we go. A excellent novel and collection of cultural commentary that is something that Matt and I enjoyed quite a bit, and you've had comparisons to Delicious Tacos in style and in other respects. And, really just one of the leading voices of this new online, sphere of, culture and literature and commentary. And thank you for coming on, Billy. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, guys, thank you so much for having me. I know we've planned this and replanned it several times. Because I've actually been out with hernia surgery. And it's kind of a funny thing. Recovering from it wasn't so funny, but getting it was shockingly relevant to our discussion here, because I directly blame the manosphere. I blame the manosphere, or at least it kind of came out of the manosphere. I found the manosphere back in early 2013, and I had been off and on going to the gym for years and years, but you find the manosphere and it's like gets you really pumped up on the idea that you're never doing enough. You're not doing enough with your time. You're not doing the right things with your time. And when you are doing the right things, it's still somehow not enough. There's like a tremendous amount of insecurity as far as how much you should be doing. You don't want to be one of those cursed bug men who are playing video games. Not that I was, but I'm like, shit, I got to do more at the gym. And suddenly I'm like, every time I'm at the gym, I'm trying to deadlift more and more. And I believe that is where I ruptured my abdominal wall and had to finally get surgery for a few weeks ago.
Shit,
Wow.
That is tough. I also have been diagnosed with a hernia, and it's apparently very small, and so I've seen other doctors about it, and the first one is like, you got to get surgery, and then I finally found enough doctors who are like, yeah, that guy's full of shit, so I'm not doing it unless I really, really have to. Yeah, it sounds pretty bad.
I don't have a manosphere induced hernia yet, but I'm sure if I keep piling the weight on, I too can get there. But no, seriously, Billy, great to have you on. Your book, Welcome to Hell, came out in June of this year, the same month as mine, through the same publisher, my book Dragon Day. So I always kind of viewed us as having, that in common, at least, having dropped our debut books the same month. I hadn't been familiar with you at all before realizing that our books were going to be coming out through Terror House so close together.
Oh, awesome. Okay, congratulations on your book coming out.
Oh, well, thank you, and congratulations to you too. The story for me with Welcome to Hell is after I published Dragon Day, I obviously I'd already bought some Terror House books, but I wanted to buy even more. When you release a book, there's this urge, for me at least, there was this urge to buy other people's. It's kind of a do unto others idea. It's like, if I want people to buy my book, I'm gonna have to buy their book too. And yours was one of the, in the big box of books I ordered from Terror House right after my book came out. Yours is right there at the top. And I read it pretty quickly. Obviously, it's got a fantastic Matt Lawrence cover depicting Casey Anthony, which I always say is one of my favorite Matt Lawrence pieces. So that made it pretty enticing to open up. And from there, I just got totally into it. As a Delicious Tacos fan, I can see the comparison, but I also think, you have very much have your own style and very much have your own set of themes, which we'll get into. But I don't mean this just to blow smoke up your ass. I think I said it on the Lawrence show as well. It definitely, reading your book was a great moment of like, I'm pretty psyched that I'm published by, by Terror House, that this is the type of stuff that my publisher is publishing bodes well, for me. So that's the compliment I'll pay you, is that it may be even more excited to be a Terror House alum.
Oh, definitely. I definitely feel the same way about Terror House. A lot of really, really good stuff coming out on Terror House. And I got to say, Matt Lawrence, I have to give Matt Lawrence some props here because he really is the best cover artist in the alt lit, subgenre or genre. His covers are absolutely fantastic. And I remember seeing your cover, that my introduction to your book. I haven't read it, unfortunately, yet, but I saw your cover and I was like, oh man, that is a badass cover. And like, I was already in love with the cover Matt did for me, but I'm like, man, if I had another book, I want to cover just like that, because that's awesome.
Great. Well, yeah,
absolutely.
Judge a book by its cover, and people should judge Dragon Day and Welcome to Hell accordingly, and pick them up. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
To get into a little bit of history, because I only came across your work through Terror House this past year, I know, and you even talked a little bit about how you discovered the Manosphere in 2013. So maybe that gives us a little bit of our answer. But I'm curious. So Welcome to Hell is I think there's a lot of original material in there, but a lot of it's also drawn from your blog, Kill to Party, which when did it debut? Maybe 2015.
2015.
So. Okay, 2015. That's what I thought. So I am curious, sort of, just what your come up was. I mean, did you think what was Kill the Party originally? Sort of, would you have thought of it as being part of the Manosphere of that time, or was it kind of its own thing? Is it more something that's kind of come into fruition with the book? So I guess, yeah, two-pronged question. One, how did you get into blogging? And two, how did you ultimately link up with Matt Forney and Terror House?
Okay. I want to say the kind of meme Kill to Party kind of came first before I even had a purpose or what to do with it. The Casey Anthony trial was going on in the summer of, I think, 2011. And I was just, I was a NEET at the time. I was not employed or in otherwise training or whatever it is, school. So I was sitting on my couch watching the Casey Anthony trial play out every day. And it just blew me away how frivolous it all was. How, usually someone has a better reason to kill, even though, we're not going to say like, killing your children's ever the right thing to do, but it usually is more complicated than it presented with Casey Anthony. Casey really just wanted to get out of that responsibility. And I feel like it was so emblematic of where we were at the time and where we were going. And I had a friend at the time who still is in film production. He's kind of skewed more documentary. And we were trying to think of ways to, how could we write this story? How can we write this story and get it made into a movie? And it's tough. It still hasn't even been done, even though it's so ripe for that. But I mean, there are some things that are just almost like so resistant to Hollywood.
Mm-hmm. Completely. Yeah, no, it's one of those things. Look, I will also, another thing to reveal. I didn't follow the Casey Anthony trial back in 2011. I was vaguely familiar with the name, so I kind of learned about that through your book, which I'm almost embarrassed about. But I mean, I'm a little bit young, so I guess I just kind of missed that back in high school. But yeah, no, it is a fascinating case, and as you point out and as you write about, there's a lot of really fascinating dynamics to it, and this idea of killing to party, how, as you explain it, this is someone who seemed essentially just to have killed someone or let someone die out of sheer negligence, because they wanted to continue their hedonistic lifestyle, essentially. There's a lot there. I agree with you. But yeah, how do you make that into a movie? I don't know. The message is too dyspeptic, I think. It would have to be, I think, a very dark comedy made by, the right people in order to really get anything worthwhile across. Because even though I think anyone would agree there's a story there, it's not a story that most people want to sell.
Definitely. And we were not just elected. We were not the right people to do something so delicate. So I kind of just let it sit. I thought it was a cool sounding little, new word, kind of inspired from the Yes We Can, kind of words of that.
Billy, I think your microphone's a tiny bit muffled. Say something. Sorry.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah, that sounds a
better.
world better. So
Yeah.
let's go with that. Sorry, I also had a separate internet thing on my end, but look, we're all back now. We're still recording. So
Yeah.
we were talking about Kill the Party and how you can't make a movie of it. And you were saying something and I couldn't hear all of it, but if you want to just pick up on that, or we can move on to another question. Either way.
Sure. No, I just, I loved the little meme I came up with, but I had no use for it. It was mind blowing. It was floored by how deluded people are, or how resistant people are to looking at things honestly. And you finally found this. Like, you think for a while, I'm like, well, am I some kind of like suburban prophet? Like, why do I see this shit that no one else is seeing? You find something like the manosphere, and suddenly there are people who are having that conversation perpetually in real time. And it was like so comforting, and it was so mind blowing. And then this guy lies about women. Society lies about women being, kind of like these moral superiors. And you really latch onto that once you find it. So Kill the Party was kind of about initially writing about modern women, with Casey Anthony as kind of like this hyper-realized version of the modern woman. But I think that if you're going about this in an honest way, you're going to see so much of what you're writing about in yourself. And that's kind of where Welcome to Hell ends. Like, Welcome to Hell ends with, like, I'm being so critical of society, so critical of modern women, modern womanhood. And it's like, how much of that is really like in me too, and by extension, like kind of in all of us, more or less.
Yeah, no, well, I to me, that's one of the things with at risk. I'm not putting down any other writers, but that is definitely a quality in your work that I see and that I really enjoyed is the degree of sort of not even self-criticism, just self-awareness, your awareness of yourself as part of this culture that you are critiquing. Sometimes I'm not naming any names, and also I think there's a place for this too. But like, some people in the manosphere are very much like, this is the way society is, but this is the way you should be. This is the way I am. I am a god among men. Well, that sounds almost 2 point. I'm actually not talking about that. I was thinking more about Artiste and like kind of his whole extolation of male freedom, essentially. But in your work, it's because basically less so even than aggrandizing folks, but more so people who really celebrate, like for example, Artiste's work, Old Rouge, could kind of be read as like, this is how you can maximize your freedom and maximize your power, and it can be really great. Whereas your work is very far from that sort of romanticization of freedom. You're definitely red-pilled, so to speak. Like, there's there's that manosphere element where you're about self-improvement and you're about sort of maximizing your status in the world. Like, there is that element in your work, but also there's a very sort of self-aware / self-critical element where, just for example, one part that really stands out to me is when you talk about male freedom as this sort of male drive to stay at the blackjack table too long. But there's that great awareness of the sort of addictive quality that chasing after ghosts, as you say, or chasing pleasure can lead you down sort of hellish rabbit holes of just wearing yourself out. That's not an element you get in all of the manosphere. Some of the manosphere is much more on the sort of more romanticization side of that.
I think that the manosphere is either guys who are closer to 30, who are still like very much taken by that lifestyle, and guys who are in it longer who are looking to kind of see what money they can make off of it. And I think that that's where you don't get a lot of kind of intellectual honesty from these older guys, because there is a lot of money to be made if you know the right things to say.
I think that makes sense. Yeah.
I would suggest that, Billy, your work is kind of, and we've talked about the manosphere to literature pipeline. And so, and we've talked about how Artiste and Rouge kind of laid the groundwork for the ferment of like, you know, more literary, you know, efforts that have come about. And so Delicious Tacos work, your work, other more literary efforts, would you characterize your work as being grounded in that ferment, but being the product of more distillation and more years spent from that period?
I think that what I try to do is kind of a reaction to the manosphere. I want to be maybe not to sound pretentious, but I'm trying to be like a step ahead. I'm trying to think of what that next move is. We all understand kind of the basic tenets of how relationships work, at least according to the manosphere, and I'm willing to allow space for that we're incorrect about some things. But I mean, as at least as far as this shared philosophy goes, we kind of understand how we think women work, how we think men work, how we think relationships work, good and bad. And I'm trying to kind of look ahead to what the next step of thinking would be.
Right. I think that's kind of been a recurring theme on a lot of the episodes of this podcast that Dan and I have recorded thus far, is the idea of kind of what comes after the manosphere, what comes after the red pill, in terms of, is it do you become is it a manosphere to literature pipeline? Is it a manosphere to politics pipeline? It's like, we're looking, because the manosphere is kind of something that's in the past tense, more or less. It really boomed about 10 years ago now, arguably, 8 to 10, give or take. And obviously the political scene is as it is. It's a little, the events of this past week notwithstanding, it's still, sort of a mire, and not very often blackpilling. But a lot of us have kind of coagulated on the internet around, again, the truth. I think that there is without getting into it on a Socratic level, I think that there is a good case to be made that, we are the faction of truth, that we recognize some of these social realities that you kind of discussed, Billy. And it's a question of like what to do with that knowledge in the culture as it is, which is, very repressive of that knowledge, and very repressive of art, which, explores that knowledge or explores those truths or those ideas. So the idea of being one step ahead of the manosphere, I don't think it's a pretentious notion at all. I think it's kind of the position we're all forced to be in. We have this value that we've gleaned from our various online communities and perhaps IRL connections. And it's a question of like, what's next?
Yeah, definitely. Especially, I think, as you age out of wanting to enjoy the decline, as they put it. I think, that's the big, at least on the red pill, on the, that Reddit subreddit, it's about enjoying the decline. It's about maximizing your lays. It's about never getting attached. It's about kind of living for yourself. But there does come a point where it's just not as exciting as it once was. And I think, biologically, that's kind of the way it's supposed to be. It is supposed to wind down at some point in your 40s, at least a little bit. And you see people react to that differently. Like you said, like Rouge, it would be the manosphere to religion pipeline.
Right.
We mentioned that in a previous pod.
Yeah. I think, I love Rouge, but I don't think that's really where he wanted things to end up. And I think he's kind of, with his back against the wall, unable to, I mean, his reputation precedes him to, so it is tough to see what's next, because I think so few people are honest about what's coming up.
Mm-hmm.
But definitely swallowing that red pill has helped. It's helped, literature. It's helped art, and even certain approaches to politics, like Jack Murphy's project, even Cernovich's project. To what extent do you think accepting these red pilling truths informs your writing today?
Entirely, but I'm going to ask you this. Is accepting these red pill truths about women ultimately a good thing or ultimately not a good thing? I think that if I'm going to use the term game, I think my game with women was probably just as good before as it is now. I think I went through a period where you'll hear a lot of guys talk about where once you find the official manosphere ways to talk to women, etc., you kind of start getting bad at it for a little bit. Because it's not supposed to be something you're self-conscious of as you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
So once you're self-conscious of, oh man, did I say the right thing? Was this the alpha way to say it? Whatever it is, you're out of the game completely. So I was probably a little better before all of this. So, okay. Was I more capable of having an authentic relationship with a woman? Probably. And even if I would have made mistakes that would have ended that relationship, as I've had long-term relationships with several women. And ultimately, if you really don't know what you're doing, it's very easy to let that relationship decay if you don't know what the components of what go into kind of keeping it healthy and positive. But am I even capable of doing that now? And I don't know. I don't know if I am. So is it a good thing? I don't know if it's a good thing. I think that male naivete was an important component of society. And my theory is that the laws are put in place, like marriage laws, like you get married young, you don't divorce. I think to preserve that male naivete, that protecting men from the reality of the nature of women. So does it make it makes for good art, but does it make for a good lifestyle? I don't know.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I mean, we had Matt Forney on last week, and he said, he didn't say exactly that, but I think he said something that would be compatible with what you just said, which is that, which is basically that he, and Matt had actually written some sort of game-esque books in the past, but he basically is of the opinion that most of the PUA stuff is either common sense or basically bullshit, and that the real contributions of the manosphere, even people who really knew what they're talking about on some level, like Artiste, it was a lot more intellectual and cultural. It brought a lot more of that to the table than did it bring the sort of actionable, pragmatic advice that it thought it was bringing. Basically, I think there probably is some pragmatic advice that still benefits some people, even if it's something as simple as eat healthy, lift weights. Obviously, there's some sort of common sense, pragmatic advice out there. But when we're really talking about the meat and potatoes of what the manosphere brought to the table, it was kind of more intellectual and cultural. And as you said, does it actually help you with women in the long term? It seems debatable. Yeah.
I think that you could probably close all your tabs and never look back if you understand that you must continuously game your relationship. So you need to keep that whatever attracted her to you in the first place, you need to keep some form of that for the rest of your life. So I used to think that, well, now she likes me, so now I could be the real me. Now I don't have to, kind of posture. I don't need to kind of always be the leader. I can emote more. All of this stuff that is how that's how the mainstream understands relationships, right? The mainstream's always telling men to be more emotional. And of course, that's really that's the best advice from the manosphere, that you need to be the leader, you need to be the rock, you need to not use her as some kind of emotional sponge.
Mm-hmm.
You need to, in essence, just kind of replicate the behavior that attracted her in the first place, in some form of that forever.
Yeah, no, I think there is that basic sort of solid foundation of advice. And in saying that, you reminded me of a thought that I've had while sort of reading Manosphere stuff that also ties into one of the themes we identified in Welcome to Hell, actually the theme that's discussed in the first passage. But basically, yeah, not only in order to keep, your wife or girlfriend attracted to you, do you need to, keep a hold on that original thing that sparked the attraction. But also one notion that I find, this is a little more in sort of the Bronze Age pervert realm of things. Obviously, it doesn't have to do directly with pickup, but something I've been thinking about a lot this past year is like, because I sort of moved in with my girlfriend over the course of Corona quarantine, which has been great. But, when you're living with a woman, like you have to you got to make sure that you keep, it can't be all encompassing. You know what I mean? Like you got to keep your own space, whether it's for me, just lifting weights an hour a day. And you just, the female urge is always to sort of draw you in and be all encompassing, which can be, it's a maternal instinct perhaps, but in order to not become, a cuck, you have to keep a little, to put it in sort of mythical terms, you got to keep a little bit of fire in you. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's it. So even beyond just simply keeping someone attracted to you, just in order to exist as a male in the world and be happy and be productive and all the rest, you have to keep a little bit of that space is how I think about it. And how does that tie into Welcome to Hell? Well, it's maybe a little tangential, but one theme that Dan and I wanted to discuss with you is the idea of pursuing family versus pursuing truth, which is something that you introduce in the first section of Welcome to Hell. I don't remember the exact context, but I have the quote in front of me. You write, one can either pursue family or pursue truth. While it isn't necessary for those who pursue family to also pursue, while it isn't necessary for those who pursue family to also pursue truth, the option is available. However, for one to eschew family, one must pursue truth. Nothing else matters, and every little bit of consumption distracts from this pursuit. I don't know if you want to unpack that, or we can hop in with our interpretations, but it seemed like an interesting dichotomy you were setting up, so I think we wanted to bring it up.
Sure. I think that for a long time, I think since I've been a teenager, I kind of thought about what is life and how does one live their best life? What's the goal of life? What's the goal of success? And I think toward my late 20s, and this was before I was, before the manosphere, before I was at the peak of me being like a bug person, like a bug man. I want to say consumption and consumerism was just entwined with this idea of to maximizing your life, making your life the best it can be. And I think that I thought, well, if I just have if I somehow have this file collection of a really badass movie collection. At the time, torrenting was really popular. I don't know if you guys are too young to torrent. It's more of a millennial thing.
I remember it, yeah.
No, I remember.
But I was I have this collection of movies. Oh man, I have every emulator on my PC. Not that I even ever used this stuff, but it was just the fact that I had it, and my goal was I want to get a 3D TV. That way I never have to go to the theater to see these bullshit superhero movies. I could just download them and watch them. I was setting up this perfectly functional consumerist paradise because I didn't understand what else life could be. I got an iPad and I started, regrettably, getting rid of all my physical copies of books because it's this thing could hold 50,000 books. I don't need to take up all that space with objects. And it was I think technology, this was in the dawn of the iPhone, technology was so at the forefront of life where it's you can perfect things with consumerism. You could perfect things with technology. And I realized how hollow and terrible that was, but that also made me think, what is, things kind of fell apart for me in my early 30s. I was not in a position to marry anyone. I was still figuring out my career and where it should go. And I started thinking about, if I didn't have a family, and I still don't, like how do you cobble meaning out of life if it's not stuff, if it's not like, well, I finally achieved this X amount of, and like boomers, of course, I mean, they weren't collecting garbage like this, but they still had this consumerist idea of perfection. And I think when you break away from that, it's like, well, I need to produce. And I think that art is it's like kind of interpreting the world and kind of creating something from that interpretation. So I think that you don't have to, you could have a family and be an artist. It's preferable probably. But I think that if you don't have a family, you should be contributing something.
Yeah, no, that definitely spoke to me. And I would even take it a step further. I think it's good to have a family and be an artist. I, hope to have a family myself, but like, realistically speaking, it can be, if to really pursue that art, to pursue that truth, that, the stuff of domesticity, whether it's a wife or kids or both, it can, like that stuff's very important. Some would say it's the most important thing. But like that pursuit of truth and that pursuit of art is fundamentally, it's a very solitary thing. And I think it really taps into that sort of notion of keeping a little bit of fire inside. Like it has to do, especially if you're like a male artist, how we speak. Any art that you create and any pursuit of truth that you engage in kind of comes out of that, I think, solitary masculine place. And it's a flame that you can have a family and have that flame, but you have to like protect it. So that was kind of my interpretation of that section.
Yeah, definitely. It's just ironic that, like I said before, I think really, really looking into the void and really figuring out the truth about certain things is making it a little difficult for me to have a relationship. So
Absolutely.
Ironic, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's part of what we were talking about, how truth, if you're going to be really very truthful, and you have to in your art, if you're going to make good art, that level of truth is not something you can have with friends or family, because they're all going to hate you if you tell them what you really, truly think. So
Yeah, did you guys have a phase where you did that? Because I think everyone.
Well, I don't think I did, but I mean, I can see how that would be very, problematic if one did have such a phase.
Wait,
I lost
sorry.
a lot of Facebook friends at the time.
A phase where you tried to pursue truth in a more public venue, you're saying? Sorry.
No, I think that once you tune into, our avenue of Twitter, our little thing we have going, or the manosphere or stuff like that, and before you really kind of understand how repugnant these ideas are to people, and I mean, it was like a perfect storm.
Yeah.
And
I
was like, you're on Facebook at like 2015, and you think Facebook is this conversation people want to have when they make posts. So you're like, oh no, you have it all wrong. Like this is, and it I don't know.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did have that phase. Yes, I wasn't going like full manosphere or like full dissident right or anything, but I was like suggesting that Donald Trump was okay in like for me it was like 2018 because I'm younger or whatever, and I came to this stuff a little later. And or like I think it was about that guy like Otto Warmbier from North, who died in North Korea, and I said something like about people who'd said like he kind of deserved it because of his like white privilege or something, and I like really I called it out in harsh terms and definitely ruffled some feathers. Thankfully it was brief, but yes, I did have that phase where I thought, I'm a smart guy, people like me, it'll be a conversation starter and people will see where I'm coming from, and I'll like positively affect the culture. That didn't last long, naturally. Thankfully I wasn't so stupid that I like totally, made myself unemployable forever, but yeah.
I think that you guys, benefited from coming in maybe a little later. I think in 2015, before Trump was elected, I'm assuming you both came into this sphere of Twitter after Trump was already elected.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think that the rules were a little less apparent after he was elected. And I think before then, it was almost like political conversation prior to that was just so stale and so boring for our entire lifetimes that it was almost like we didn't know what not to say. I mean, we knew some things you can't say, but right. But yeah, before Trump, it was definitely like a little more of a free for all. And I always talk to people who were like, yep, like that blew up my normie life. And that was that. And I just ended up even just deleting Facebook. I don't need to argue or have these people from high school hate me, you know?
Mm-hmm. For sure. Yeah, no. And like, not even to get into even more controversial stuff, but like even some of the people who went, even further, like with the trial that's going on right now. And I don't even want to get into that too much. And I'm not necessarily sympathetic to a lot of those ideas. But like, even them, I can almost kind of not feel bad might be the wrong word, but I can understand how people got carried away in that moment and thought they could like go to rallies, without, just be captured on camera and like thought that could be okay. But because that was a moment, everything was still new back then in terms of, this is a political moment and Trump's this dynamic figure and like things are changing and things are changing for the better. And like, you can get out there and,
in at least opening up conversations that were previously, forbidden.
Exactly. And that door got slammed very much in their face.
And I think it's the slamming of the door itself that kind of, at least I know it red-pilled me. And I think, Matt, you as well were kind of, in the aftermath of Trump's election, the kind of like media monoculture response to it was just, it transformed me into someone who, became red-pilled on the media. And then, very, relatively quickly red-pilled on most other, things that our side, talks about.
For sure.
So you guys came in from politics.
Oh man, I think we came in from different directions. We only met online this past year. I came in through a strange sort of route, but yeah, I think it would be fair to say basically through politics / culture, because I sort of got into it when I realized there was more of like an underground sort of publishing and art scene, which I don't think is the most common narrative, but that was really my first. I've always been like had like some like conservative hankering, so like it wasn't the political thing wasn't necessarily like a total 180, but in terms of getting into like this sphere is very much like this is actually a really cool place to be and like
Sure.
there are people saying interesting stuff about politics and about just like cultural stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Bridging kind of from the manosphere, I found I don't know if you've been to our Dark Enlightenment.
I haven't, but I probably am familiar. I mean, it's Dark Enlightenment is essentially synonymous with NRX, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I have not been to our Dark Enlightenment, but I'm sure that the ideas there would be familiar to me.
I mean, it was I do kind of feel lucky that I guess I could say I got red pilled the right way. I went from the manosphere to our Dark Enlightenment, where I immediately started reading Moldbug. I'm not going to say I'm by any stretch a Moldbug expert, but his open letter to open-minded progressives was like switching on a light switch.
Mm-hmm.
Like it like was absolutely mind-blowing. And I think that if I didn't have that foundation of we've been lied to about women, like almost like 100%, like the truth is like the polar opposite of what people say. I don't know how receptive I would have been to Moldbug basically broadening that to, well, you've really been lied to about, everything.
Yeah. No, that is like a very classic, and I do think in some ways good and sort of well-adjusted trajectory to take. I guess the bad trajectory is when you're just really pissed and angry and like you go crazy, but slowly gleaning understanding about real social dynamics is a good way to go, I would say. And yeah, no, we're definitely a very pro Moldbug podcast. So yeah.
Yeah, Moldbug's awesome. I actually had the pleasure of meeting him once, and
Really?
Oh, wow.
he's a very, very cool guy. So I'm very pro Moldbug as far as, and I kind of want to, I think that's really the extent of as right wing as I'm going to get, and I think that is the safe route to take in our current year.
Oh, I think so. Yeah, Moldbug, lo and behold, has gained some, not mainstream, but he was on Tucker, is what I'm trying to say, and like,
right.
He's very good at, and I'm not even saying like, oh, he just knows not to say what he really thinks. I just think I'm not even saying that. I just think he's a very smart and nuanced guy, and has a take that it's intellectual and it's not founded in any like one prejudice or the other, but rather just a very kind of clean take on like what's not working in society and how there is a right wing alternative. So yeah, I think he's a good sort of what's the word? He's a relatively safe and smart person to sort of follow.
Definitely.
And making inroads with like the hip cool kids and what have you. He's like showing up at parties and stuff.
Yeah, no, definitely. The expat press party, Moldbug made an appearance. But anyway, to bring it back to the book a little bit, another sort of theme that we talked about a little bit, but that I found in Welcome to Hell, and especially on a sort of second reading I did, sort of noticed it even more perhaps, was the notion of like the search for authenticity. You write, and we'll get into this later too, but a big part of Welcome to Hell, you write a lot about pop culture, about musicians and bands and movies, and sort of tie them very skillfully, I will say, into stuff about your own life, whether you're writing about the Tom Hanks movie Big, or the trajectory of Lou Reed's career, or the band Kiss's career. Just as a little advertisement for the book, anyone who's into that kind of stuff, pop culture essays, should absolutely tune in, or rather read Welcome to Hell. Billy is kind of I don't know. Have you read much Chuck Klosterman? I don't know. If
Dude, I was just about to say that Chuck Klosterman really, inspired that side of it. I remember reading an essay, my favorite Chuck Klosterman piece, aside from his, of course, 10,000 word essay on Kiss, which is going to appeal to me personally, but he wrote a really great essay on Kurt Cobain, comparing Kurt Cobain to David Koresh. And I remember reading that thinking like, this is what I want to do. And this is like, dude, this is years before I wrote a word about this, but I was always like thinking I wanted to write these cultural essays, because I my background is my degree is in literature and philosophy. I love
me
writing.
Too. Exactly. My degree, awesome. But go on.
Me too.
I loved writing, papers on literature, but that's one, that is extraordinarily time consuming, and two, who's going to read it? So I wanted to write about something that people are going to read. So when I found Klosterman, I was so inspired. And and to give Delicious Tacos props, the memoir side of it, where I kind of like inserted myself into it, really did come from Tacos, where when I read Tacos, it was this incredible, he speaks like he does not posture one bit. There's no false self there. He is so open and honest. He's not trying to convince you that he's a cool person, even though he is a cool person, but there's no, when he talks about sex, it's not to impress you. And I wanted to combine those elements. And I really appreciate you saying that I did it well, because I'm always wondering if it's a little too much of one, a little too much of the other. I wanted it to be like a swirl.
Oh, I'm not just saying this because you're on the podcast and I want to be nice. Like it is exactly that. It is very seamless mix of exactly those two things, tacos into Klosterman. That was my honest reading of it. So very well done. But Chuck Klosterman is great, and you definitely have very much nailed that style of essay on popular culture. Related to that too, so Klosterman's Gen X. I believe you're Gen X. Not that I'm going to make you say exactly how old you are.
Oh, that's cool. I'm 41.
There you go. So pretty much you would say.
Well,
Gen
you're on
X.
the cusp, I think. 41 is like, maybe millennial, maybe Gen X.
I guess there's a word for it that's X. I never said it out loud. They combine it's a portmanteau of Gen X and millennial.
Xennial.
Probably.
Something like that.
Probably.
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard Zillennial with a Z, which is, I guess, more or less what I am. A younger millennial. But maybe it's Zillennial with an X. It's the same word spelled different. I don't know. But nevertheless, I did not to overstate this, and some people kind of roll their eyes at the whole Gen X thing, but I do think in a very, and I mean this only in a positive way, there is something very Gen X about your writing, and as far as especially that theme of the sort of search for authenticity that you write about. Which again, sort of like we were talking about the manosphere stuff, there's a nuance there. You're not just writing about, society's bullshit and you have to live authentically and here's how you're going to do it. It's more like, there's a lack of soul, or a lack of, there's this sort of dead spirit at the heart of culture, and you seek that authenticity. But there's also an awareness of your work that you can be searching for that authenticity and never find it. Like the authenticity that you're searching for may just be out of your reach is kind of the slightly more pessimistic reading of someone I find you're writing. And then back to that blackjack staying at the table too long idea. I feel like there's also this sense that you write about very keenly or poignantly that in one search for authenticity, you can stay at the table too long and you can burn out. But it's nuanced. It's not just that, because you write about the guy from REM who started a farm, and I think you're genuinely positive about that guy, or even Lou Reed's Metal Machine music. How is this sort of cathartic burning down of his career? You say one refrain in the novel is "It was an integrity move," which I like. So there are authentic integrity moves that you can make, and that can be good, but also you can stay too long at the table. Is kind of the nuanced take that I bring away from your book. And I loop that into Gen X. I think there is something very Gen X about that search for an elusive authenticity that may not be there. It's something that I recognize in writers even like David Foster Wallace. I know he's kind of a cucked comparison, and your book's not that much like David Foster Wallace, but nevertheless, there is a little bit of that thematic overlap. But even, a writer that I like more like Bret Easton Ellis, or even like Chuck Palahniuk with Fight Club. Again, just that notion of the search for authenticity that may be just out of your reach. I don't know. Does any of this speak to you? Do you think it is generational, Gen X?
Boy, I mean, do millennials care about authenticity? I don't know. I do know that the relevancy of Catcher in the Rye diminishes by the year.
Right.
I do teach English, and I was very excited to finally teach a class, Catcher in the Rye, and because as a 10th grader, I read it in 10th grade, and that has to be where this kind of the genesis of all of this. And I remember it was one of my favorite books in high school. It really just blew my mind, and I'm reading it to kids today, and it didn't resonate even a little bit.
Wow. I mean, look, so not to butt in, but I have to, it's interesting. I'm a millennial. I'm 20, almost 27. I too read Catcher in the Rye in 10th grade. So about 10 years ago now. I loved it and it spoke to me. But maybe, I'm not sure if everyone else in my generation would have said the same. And it sounds like maybe, the Gen Z proper that's in high school now, or maybe even younger. You're telling me it doesn't speak to them, which I'm not shocked. What does the notion of authenticity mean to the TikTok generation. And by the way, this is not me shitting on Gen Z. It's just
Sure.
the cultural signification has changed so much. And I don't know if like authenticity or like being real, but being real is a concept that you see kicked around. So I don't know, but like, yeah, I think that the notion of like being authentic spoke to me at a certain age, and I like a lot of Gen X and older writers, maybe because of that, but it definitely does seem like it's something that's missing from the culture now.
I think it doesn't occur to Gen Z, and I think that I'm going to make a sweeping generalization here. I think millennials want the appearance of authenticity as if it were a consumer good in and of itself. I do think that there's less time to be reflective just because millennials and especially Gen Z have grown up with so much content available at their fingertips. So a few weeks ago during Halloween season, I was watching Halloween 3. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the series.
I just watched Season of the Witch.
That's it.
Yeah, good movie.
So what blew me away, I mean, I enjoy it more every time I see it. It's so weird. But what really, I think the scariest part of that movie is the first 5 minutes, there's a guy sitting at a gas station, the gas station attendant, and he's reading a magazine and it's nighttime. He's completely alone. You can't be alone like that in today's world. No one is alone like that in today's world. And that kind of solitude I found to be the most frightening part of the movie. And it really stuck with me. So if you don't have spaces like that, where you're in your house, you don't have friends to talk to, you just have the collection of CDs or magazines, whatever you have, there's just no space to really sit around and reflect on things. You're just kind of constantly being given more and more media to consume.
That's absolutely true. Like, because of these things, we're never alone. And that's something that I've reflected on, because I remember I was on vacation somewhere and I, wasn't able to use my phone. And my reading comprehension, I was reading a novel, never was better. It's just like my mind clicked back on and I was able to like really get into this novel. And I think that this, constant companion of, media barrage really does, destroy our focus to some degree.
Yeah, go on.
No, I just think millennials kind of understand the concept of you want to seem authentic. Millennials are I think, the first generation to really embrace the perception control. Far more than, they were the first generation to be really adept at using social media. I just don't think it occurs to Gen Zers. I don't think that. I think it's a completely foreign idea.
I think
that there's anything outside of profiles, outside of the profile that you present. And that's something that I think you're right is foreign to Gen Z and to, millennials. It's where the generation that grew up knowing that, like, oh, you have a Facebook account, you have a this account, that account, and you present in this way and you present in that way.
Right.
And it's it's weird. It's not natural. And Gen Z, they don't, but for them, it's not natural because they grew up with it.
Yeah. Well, case in point, Gen Zers do not use Facebook. So it's already kind of more depersonalized. You know what I mean? It's Instagram at best, but I don't even know if the youngest people use that anymore. Maybe it's all TikTok. It's more stimuli, and it's not so founded in like a sort of linguistic encapsulation. There used to be the Facebook bio where when I was like 13, 14, like I tried to like pour my soul into that thing. And I don't think any Gen Zers even care about that. It's more about the surface of things, more about just, I don't know. Obviously we don't just want to like sound old complaining about how weird Gen Z culture is and the Billie Eilish-ness of it all. But like, obviously there is an element of that where it's like, it's hard to even tell when they're being serious or not. But look, okay, so we could put it negatively, like these people don't even have time to think, and therefore the notion of authenticity is foreign to them. Or maybe they knew it was bullshit all along. And like, I don't know if there's been any really great Gen Z art, so I'm not going to be like too laudatory of them as a generation, but like a lot of the things that they would say like, oh, that's bullshit anyway, they're probably right about. I mean, again, I poured my soul into that Facebook bio, but like that wasn't really me either. So
Sure.
Gen Z is sort of, I don't want to overstate it, oversimplify, but I mean, some people actually compare Gen Z to Gen X because Gen X, said again, whenever we're speaking about this, we're speaking in sweeping generalizations, but the notion being that Gen X sort of swept away certain boomer mentality as being bullshit. In theory, that's what's happening with Gen Z now. Is the culture's they're sort of more of a termite is too negative a word, but a generation that sort of breaks free of stuff that happened before, and perhaps there's an element of that. But what comes next is a big fat question mark to me.
Yeah. I mean, I guess stay tuned, right? I don't know either. I don't have a good enough answer. I do think that there's going to be more occurrences of non-binary gender. I think that we're just really seeing it roll out, and I think it's I mean, I don't know if they're going to be ultimately sticking with it for the rest of their lives, or if this is something that's like kind of the new punk rock for it's something you outgrow in your early 20s. I don't know.
Yeah, or maybe it will move beyond being just a gender issue and morph for good or for ill, probably for ill, into other realms where it's because it's not just like different. It's not just like a million different genders. It's also, again, and you've been posting a little bit about Billie Eilish recently, so I'll use this as her as an image. It's the whole not to get academic about it, but like postmodernism of it all, of gluing different elements sort of together, where Billie Eilish is like emo but also sort of like takes influence from hip hop, and I feel like there's an element of that in Gen Z culture, whereas it's kind of an amalgam of a million different like signifiers. But that could steer the conversation in like an unnecessarily sort of academic direction that I don't want to, but you get what I'm saying. Like there's a kind of cultural melange that's going on, and I feel like it taps into that gender thing a bit, because it's all about like this I think false notion of creating yourself totally from scratch.
Sure.
Yeah. But to go back a little bit, one thing, another little great insight in your book is you've described reading as the leg day of writing. And I was reminded of that when we were talking about being overstimulated, as we all are. I mean, like I try to read. I don't read like terribly much, of it, but I try to read every day, is what I'm trying to say. And it really is this incredible process of like, I do it in the morning. Like I wake up and I end up checking my phone, but then I'm like, all right, I'm going to read a chapter of a novel. And yeah, it's like it's like a cognitive switch you have to make. And sometimes you have to like read that first page like a bunch of times before you can actually attune your brain to be able to take in information in that sort of more patient and careful and reflective way. But no, to bring it to your quote, it's almost like I can't believe you'd be the first person to say that, but I think you probably are. Reading is the leg day of writing. It's a perfect image.
Yeah, definitely. I find that my writing process kind of, I start with reading stuff that you almost want to start with your takes. You want to start with your reflections that aren't necessarily put into flowery language yet. And then I try to read stuff that is kind of has the sound of what I want my work to sound like. I think that I'm pretty good with like kind of emulating a writer's voice, or maybe like kind of getting a feel for a writer. At least I try to. So I think there's the stage of like taking in all this information and processing it, and then the stage of the output where I want to, I want to kind of shape that information into something that isn't just like bullet points, that actually has like that merit in reading.
Absolutely.
I struggle with this. But what you really want to do is not look at your phone. You want to read a little bit in the morning, then maybe try to write 500 to 1,000 words if you have the time to do that, and then look at your phone after. Your productivity will just go through the roof. Like there's like your Twitter, your phone, mind eraser. So I think when I've been at my best has been like doing that journaling first thing in the morning.
That's why I read before I go to bed, because it works perfectly, because I'm not looking at my phone, so I detox from the phone, and I'm able to focus on reading, and by the time I'm read enough, I'm no longer overstimulated, and I can go to sleep.
Well, now that we're getting into routine talk, the last sort of theme that I sort of identified in Welcome to Hell to bring up is the salvation. Maybe that's too strong of a word, but the salvation and routine and of good lifestyle choices. Billy, you write in Welcome to Hell, but also in our personal chats about how you go to bed really early, get up really early. You have a chapter in Welcome to Hell on your weightlifting regime and, eating a good diet. And it sounds boring to some people, like, oh, who cares, like, how you spend your days? But like, I always find when there's someone, whether it's a writer or in some other field that I respect, that they have some kind of accomplishment that I admire, like, I actually find, like, I love to know how they handle their day to day, because like it's often a struggle for me, like, how much time do I put into working out, how much time do I put into writing, reading, work, yada yada. It's like, I think it is relevant, and it becomes a major theme, especially towards the end of Welcome to Hell, how like sort of we talked earlier about the degree to which the book is about hedonism, about the notion of killing the party. And for me, Welcome to Hell left me with a thought with that, like, when the party's over, what you're left with is, or what you can be left with is routine. And you can maximize your routines in order to get like the best outcomes. And it's not a boring thing at all. It's all about like channeling creative energy. And I don't know, I guess this isn't really a question, but just I don't know, commenting on the degree to which routine and the salvation of routine is a major theme in Welcome to Hell.
Sure. But like I said before, well, for one, I 100% agree that I'm all about maximizing productivity and trying to, really maximize my creative energy. But like I was saying before, how I kind of want to be like the next step of the manosphere. I do have in that chapter, I do wonder if productivity can be an abyss.
Right.
Like, if you make every part of your day pragmatic, is there have to be at some point diminishing returns.
Yes.
I think I ended that chapter with asking, saying, talking to God directly and saying, well, maybe I'll start getting to bed like 15 minutes earlier.
That's what yeah. Okay. In my little run up there, I think I overstated the productivity part. I think more just generally the salvation routine, whether it's for productivity's sake or for like, to sound like an SJW, like for mental health,
Right.
Yeah, routine is not just about productivity, but just finding that rhythm in life where you are both as, productive, but also balanced. And yeah, no, I think it's not all about productivity. I think the theme of finding that balance in your life really comes across. I think it does maybe have a little bit to do with sort of like you talked about earlier, like you hit a certain age and that biological clock or whatever you want to call it tells you, you to stop just chasing things all day and rather just like, settle down a little bit and find that routine. I feel like that's where the book sort of left me in the end, was like, that you can burn out. There's all this burnout that happens, culture, we're all overstimulated. Like there's so much that can burn us out. And yet you can find, just in the little decisions you make in your day-to-day life, like you can find that sort of peace.
Definitely. Just, don't overdo it.
No,
I mean, like, I was like,
oh, I'm sorry. Go on.
I was I edited so much of my book at work during my off periods, and like I'm sitting there with like a big printed out copy of my book, a pencil in my hand, and I'm thinking to myself how like irritated I am about people like making chit chat, and it's like how ridiculous. Like I'm wrong though. I'm ridiculous. Like there should be space for obviously people talking to each other at work, and like you think like that's overdoing it. Actually getting mad at your coworkers for not sitting in silence.
Yeah.
No, there was a part of getting to the writing process, a part of your book where you mentioned that the best writing is when you are not thinking of your audience. You're writing, well, not thinking of them, but you're not trying to please them. You're writing, your own story, and you're not concerned with whether they'll like it, whether they won't. And I 100%, feel that and agree with that. But I'm curious, how do you square that? Because you have an, impressive social media presence. How do you square the, the artistic side, where if you want to do great art, it's best if you do not concern yourself with how it will be received, with also building a presence as an author?
Oh man, I think that you need to hope people like what you have to say. So much of finding an audience is luck. I do think that I'm pretty good, but I think I benefited from getting in early on a sphere of the internet that was kind of, growing like in real time, like by the day. I think there weren't many very interesting manosphere writers outside of Delicious Tacos at the time, who were writing more than just like very, instructional manuals. I think that when I started introducing like right-wing Twitter and people in the neo-reactionary sphere to manosphere ideas, there wasn't really a lot of cross-pollination there. So I think that I built an audience, luckily, that way. But I do, every time I write something, when I make a reference, I think to myself, like, do I explain this reference? Or do I kind of just let it settle and let whoever's going to get it is going to get it? And, maybe no one will ever get it. Maybe no one will ever praise me for being clever, which is like, obviously what you want as a writer. But it was really about like, how much do you give your audience? How much do you explain? How much do you hold their hand? I think that I think any art needs to be kind of your subconscious interacting with the medium. Like I said, there's the phase of you're taking things in, you're reflecting, you're kind of like processing the world around you. But I think that output just needs to be purely subconscious, and it is what it is. I also do want people to read my work because I think it's great. So I gave my book title a meme. Welcome to Hell. I wanted it to be a meme title. And I think to at least some extent that's worked out for me, where people, yeah. So, I mean, you do have to promote yourself to some degree, but I think when it comes down to the work itself, I think the work itself must be genuine. Anytime I've tried to pander, write something because I thought it would get views, whatever, it never did. And I finally just took that as a sign of do whatever you want and hope for the best.
Yeah. But you are quite a maestro with Twitter. I mean, you gained a couple thousand followers since the release of Welcome to Hell, correct?
I did.
Yeah. So, I mean, no, not to undercut anything you just said, because I think, the work, especially when it comes to actual literary output, you just can't worry about it, as you said. But within that, I would give you props that you're very good at posting sort of interactive stuff on Twitter, whether it's that game you were doing recently about whether certain women had OnlyFans or not. Or even, I think, just very geniusly is just, having a meme title. That's meme, not mean. A meme title for your book, and you're able to just pull stuff from the headlines and write "Welcome to Hell," and then you throw a link under it, and it's good content. And like you've been tweeting "Welcome to Hell" at least since June, if not before. But like I still see some of your "Welcome to Hell" tweets, and like they make me laugh. Like if you have a formula there where you can easily put out like good Twitter content and link it to a very professional sellable item. So yeah, there's basically, long story short, as you are proof of, there's ways to sell your work without selling out. I think you even had like a list over the summer. I was kind of digging for it in prep for this show, didn't find it, but you came up with a list of like 8 to 10 ways to boost your Twitter following, didn't you?
I might have. I honestly don't remember.
Well,
but I was going to say, it just on the subject of memes. Unfortunately, you can't copyright a meme or trademark. Just today, do you know Rollo Tomasi?
I know he old Manosphere guy, right?
Old Manosphere guy who does streams on YouTube. He named his stream "Kill to Party."
Oh, damn!
So,
right. I saw that now. Yeah.
So I tuned in just to see. Look, man, I don't. You can't own a take. You can't. It is what it is. But at least mention me. And his explanation of where he came to this "Kill to Party" meme was just an absolute lie. He said that he first saw it in 2012, and he explained it in his own like self-serving way.
Oh man.
Grifting his Manosphere philosophy. But man, that just was like, oh, he's lying. He stole my thing and he's lying about it.
I think so. If he called it "Welcome to Hell," I'd be like, well, can't really copyright that. But "Kill the Party" is pretty specific.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
Totally agree. You just got to let it go. And I offered him, I said, well, I see you like my meme. If you'd like to review my book, let me know. And of course, he liked that tweet, but did not get back to me.
Well, maybe there's time, but damn, I'm sorry to hear it.
Well, but the thing is, though, you just got to keep pushing forward, making new things. You can't just rely on one gimmick.
Right. And look,
Absolutely.
maybe he'll feel bad and he will, review the book. Who knows? Hoping for the best, but yeah.
And frankly, your audience, they know you and they read your work. And Rollo has, a big audience, but I don't think that, his audience, if they stumbled across your work, would incorrectly presume that, you had, taken his title. I think they would correctly presume that like your work is your own. And like clearly, like, it syncs with everything that you've done.
Right.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
Billy, what do you have any projects now that "Welcome to Hell" is out and doing well? What projects are you working on now? What's next for Billy Pratt?
I want to write. "Welcome to Hell" was a bunch of kind of loosely related blog posts going back to 2015 that I kind of retrofitted into a book. And the best compliment, or one of the best compliments I can get, is that it actually reads like a book. I feel it does, at the end of the day, read like I wrote it in not in one sitting, but in one shot as one book. I kind of want to take that formula and start from the ground up. And I have an idea of where I want the next book to go. I have an idea of the themes I want to touch on, and I want to start that way, writing for a second book, rather than kind of retroactively retrofitting old essays. People tell me that "Welcome to Hell" is depressing, and I didn't think it was. So yeah. I want to write something that is kind of darker. I want to actually go darker, and I would like to, as best I can, make it non-sexual. I want to kind of veer away from that. I'm someone who, if you tell me what my writing is or what my writing's about, I'm gonna just want to do the opposite. I don't want to be pigeonholed into anything. I definitely am not trying to actually be delicious tacos. So I think there are things that we could get into that are deeper than dating. I think dating is almost like almost, I don't want to call it artificial, but it's like this. Emotionally, it's heartbreak is almost like a parody of real dark sadness.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. It's also just very done at this point.
You
Yeah.
Right, of course, but I think with heartbreak, it's something you usually you get over, and you kind of almost fondly remember that whole experience. But I think there are real issues people have with family, issues people have with themselves that are very painful and very real, and not something that you move past in the same way. Mm-hmm. And I really want to touch on those things. I want to talk about relationships with, your parents. I want to talk about, these things that typically people are uncomfortable with. People don't want to talk about. I really just want to kind of go in that route and make it not so dark, like intentionally dark, but, I just want to talk about things that maybe resonate in that way. Almost to compare, have you seen Human Centipede?
No, actually, I know what it is, obviously, but I haven't. I never got around to it.
Yeah, I think it's great. I think Human Centipede's great, but Human Centipede compared to Human Centipede 2 is like a Disney movie. Human Centipede 2 is really like every frame of it is trying to make you squirm, is trying to make you uncomfortable. And I kind of want to make that like the analogy between this book and the next book. I want to really go for those things that are, are darker.
Interestingly, and I don't want to promise because I have not started writing my next, my effort after Dragon Day yet, but so I don't want to promise something that I then never deliver on. But that's somewhat in the wheelhouse of what I may be going for as well. I think that I kind of thought Dragon Day was darker than it was. I mean, it's about a bombing, so it's a little bit dark. It's obviously pretty dark, but I kind of want to hone in on some more extreme emotions. I genuinely don't want to promise something that I then don't deliver on, but I think I understand your process. You have a first novel, and then with the next one, it's not so much that you need to push the envelope for pushing the envelope's sake, but like there is a desire to go deeper or go harder in some sense. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for to really, just kind of continue that path.
No, that's fantastic. And
awesome.
We don't need to put this in the final recording if this is not currently on the docket, but were you talking about potentially curating a compendium of like pop culture essays by you and others?
Yes, I do want to do that. I'm just finding a lot of trouble kind of getting motivated to start. It's something I want to do because quite frankly, I think it's going to raise my profile. And I think that I have some very, I don't want to say powerful because it sounds corny, but I have very well-known acquaintances who would participate. And I think that, in doing so would raise my own profile. But I'm, just at the end of the day, I'm really into the stuff I'm into. And, so yeah, no, I do want to do that, but I think I need to kind of push myself to get it going.
Yeah, fair enough. And no rush. I would definitely be happy to potentially contribute when you're working on it. I do think it's a good idea because you do have some great acquaintances. And look, I think that you are the kind of Chuck Klosterman of this corner of Twitter, but I also think there's room for other people to for you to sort of corral some other people because it's not, I think it's a space that can grow, writing about pop culture in that Klosterman-esque way, but also in a kind of red-pilled way. I mean, you could fill libraries with that. So I think it's a good idea.
Because there's nothing else out there like it right now. So that's all yours.
Yeah, no, definitely. I appreciate that. So hopefully it stays that way.
All right. Well, unless either of you have anything else you want to add or promote, I think we can pretty much wrap it up.
No, man, I'm good. Thank you so much for having me on. I thought it was a great conversation. I'm I'd be, very happy to return at some point.
For sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No,
Yeah,
enjoyed
thank
the
you
heck
for coming
out of
on,
this.
Billy.
Yeah.
It's been good.
Yeah, no, fantastic conversation, guys.